Mowgli has hit Netflix, and this is a movie that so many people were excited for. Following the 2016 live-action version of The Jungle Book, it set high standards, grossing nearly $1 billion. People were confused as to why there was a remake of the movie again. However, Andy Serkis confirmed that this was going to be slightly different to any other versions of the tale that we've seen on the screens before. I thought, with the releases not being that far apart in terms of cinema, let's take a look at both movies and do a comparison and see which one reigns supreme. Before I go ahead, make sure you go over to my Twitter @BrainPilot_ and tweet me which movie you prefer and why. So without further ado, I'm BrainPilot, and here is Mowgli Legend of the Jungle versus The Jungle Book. Obviously, this is going to contain spoilers. The story. See, with both films following the same character in the same setting, you would expect the story to be, well, the same. However, it's not quite. The Jungle Book is essentially a direct remake of the Disney classic from 1967, which is loosely based off of the story from 1894. The 2016 film holds the characters that we love dearly with all of the songs that have been ingrained in our memory. We follow Mowgli go through his turbulent journey in the jungle whilst having to avoid the monkeys, eat fruit and learn how to survive, whilst ultimately protecting all of the animals and, more importantly, himself from Shere Khan. We don't really see Mowgli interact with his own kind in this movie, and it shows his passion for the jungle and the relationship that he has with all of the animals, especially with Baloo, who is almost like his mentor. In the end, we see an amazing, epic, yet somewhat unrealistic battle between Mowgli and Shere Khan, and we see Mowgli reign supreme, whilst defeating Shere Khan with the skills that he had learned, and the jungle lives happily ever after. Classic Disney, which there's no problem with, as it's what we expect. Now let's take a look at Mowgli. Mowgli is a more realistic version of the tale that was told centuries ago. There are no songs that take place, and this isn't designed to be a feel-good, happy movie. This is a dark take on the story as you follow Mowgli with his fight for survival and his struggle to fit in with both man, wolf and the jungle. We see him a countless number of times get frustrated with being different, and we also see him ostracized by the other animals. In this movie, we see him interact with the humans and form a relationship with them. For a moment, he gets a sense of belonging, and that was something that you could clearly see that he had never felt before. This is until he realized that the hunter is just as bad as what Shere Khan is. This movie took a different approach with the jungle being in turmoil. It was due to Shere Khan and due to man all at the same time, but mainly due to the hunter. However, in the end, you see a battle with Mowgli and Shere Khan where it is somewhat more realistic, due to the fact that he uses tools made by man to take down Shere Khan, but also all of the skills that he had learned in the jungle. This story is more based off of the book than the animated movie, and it was great to see this take. The ending didn't make you feel good, it just came to a conclusion with Mowgli leading the pack that he so long wanted to fit into. And as well, he brought the peace back to the jungle due to the elimination of the hunter and the defeat of Shere Khan. Depending on what mood you're in, it will determine which one you would rather watch. However, on this occasion, I would have to say that Andy Serkis' story in Mowgli takes the crown. It's an approach that we didn't see in the Disney film, which is what I thought we would get with all of these live-action remakes. I do wish, however, the final battle in Mowgli was as cinematic and as epic as The Jungle Book, but I suppose it does highlight that Mowgli, he's just a boy, and it also highlights he's a hybrid of both. I didn't find myself on the edge of my seat in Mowgli at the end, and I was craving that feeling, which I think personally it's a shame. The CGI. The CGI is always going to be a big thing in both of these movies, seeing as though it's all CGI. 100% hands down, the CGI was better in The Jungle Book. Take the wolves for example. They nailed the texture of the fur and the way that they moved. You felt as if you were actually looking at real wolves. Whereas in Mowgli, the wolves just looked slightly animated and almost like cartoons. Baloo on the other hand, I thought he looked very, very good, and they nailed the facial features. His face on the close-ups looked extremely real. I thought with Andy Serkis on board and with his experience with CGI due to playing Gollum, and of course the legendary character that's Caesar, I did expect it to look a little better, so I was slightly disappointed. Two characters that I thought were animated quite well was Shere Khan and Bagheera. There wasn't any point where I thought that Shere Khan looked animated. However, when Bagheera entered the man village, I then realised obviously it wasn't an actual animal, and that became a prominent thing from there on. It took me out of the world a little bit. However, the world, and more specifically the jungle, is something that has to be praised in both movies. The setting looks extremely real and is something that you find yourself feeling completely immersed within. Overall, I would most definitely say that the CGI was better in the Jungle Book, but I'm going to put that down to a budget difference. I can't imagine the Andy Serkis take getting as high of a budget as Disney, which was about 130 million, I think. The cast and characters. Mowgli. Mowgli is the main character that you follow in both movies, and I feel as though they nailed the character in Mowgli Legend of the Jungle more. Again, with the Netflix movie taking more inspiration from the novel and not on the animated film, it makes sense why the character feels a lot more real and not so animated. You see him hit a low point that wasn't quite there in the Jungle Book, whereas in the Jungle Book you can definitely tell that it's based off of the animated movie. There is a form of attachment that's lacking in the movie, and I feel as though that's the fundamental issue. He looks like he's also wearing a wig, and he seems too squeaky clean to have been brought up in the jungle by a pack of wolves. Shere Khan. Where do I start with this legendary character? In Mowgli, it's voiced by Sherlock, and in the Jungle Book, it's voiced by Luther. It's Benedict versus Idris. Who wins? Benedict. Let me tell you why. When watching both movies, Benedict has a tone to his voice that sounds like pure evil, which is what Shere Khan is. He actually sounds like what you'd expect a tiger that is full of pure hatred would sound like. Whereas when watching Idris voice the character, it sounds good, don't get me wrong. However, it just sounds like a man from London speaking into a mic. I feel the character Shere Khan though visually is executed better in the Jungle Book. This is due to the battles that you see him in and the impressive CGI. Although in Mowgli, it doesn't have as many battles or fights, or even violence. There's a lot more threatening behaviour, and I tend to prefer to see a villain have an amazing final battle where he truly does get his comeuppance. Bagheera. The Bagheeras of this world are the characters that you tend to like and you're supposed to like in movies. If I'm being honest, I didn't really see that much of a difference in Ben Kingsley's portrayal or the Christian Bale version. Visually, the Jungle Book would have the edge, but personality-wise and characteristics-wise, I feel as though they are very, very similar. Baloo. Baloo was a character that in Mowgli was completely different to any version of him that we've seen before. We normally see Baloo as this dopey character that just wants to lay around all day and eat. However, in Mowgli, he was almost like this drill sergeant that trained the wolves and helped strengthen the pack. This was great to see. We saw a bear be a bear. An aggressive one at points as well. In the Jungle Book, he looks completely different. They're almost like two completely different bears. If I were to take a side with which portrayal I preferred, I would have to say Andy Serkis' portrayal in Mowgli. It was great to see the polar opposite of one of the most friendliest characters that we've seen on our screens before. Baloo in Mowgli, he wanted the best for him, even if it meant being tough. You saw a tough love kind of relationship. Car. Scarlett Johansson vs Cate Blanchett. Who wins? Scarlett. Simple. In Mowgli, I felt like Car's significance in the movie wasn't really that much. She didn't have the hypnotic tone that I thought was the point of the character. Instead, she was the narrator at the start, end, and saved Mowgli in the middle. There wasn't much relevance. Scarlett, on the other hand, served this character well, especially with the character's voice. She was mysterious, hypnotic, scary, yet helpful all at the same time. It's always going to be difficult to beat Scarlett Johansson, let's be honest. I know Car in the Jungle Book was based off the animated film, but at least there was a reason for the character there. Final thoughts. Overall, I feel as though there are good things that can be taken away from both. The story is executed better in Mowgli, the CGI is better in the Jungle Book, and the cast and characters are a mixed bunch. But overall, I would say that Mowgli wins overall. I would not go into Mowgli expecting to see the classic Disney movie that you'd usually see, as it's not Disney. But go in with the mindset that you're about to watch a troubling story of a young boy abandoned, fighting for his life on a daily basis whilst trying to find where to fit in. If I were to recommend one, it would be Mowgli, purely due to the fact that it's a different take on the story that we've seen several times. It makes a refreshing change. It's not perfect by any means, but it transports you into the jungle, and for an hour and a half, you're rooting for Mowgli. You get the sense of conclusion at the end, and you really do believe that you see how this young boy became the legend of the jungle. Whereas with the Jungle Book, you heavily follow 3 characters for the runtime, and you get a sense of family, and everything being done for the greater good. Whilst Mowgli touches on these themes heavily, you experience the darker side more. Go and watch both of these movies and see what you prefer more. Whether it be you're watching it for the story, CGI, or purely due to the cast, I'm sure you'll enjoy both. But for me, it's Mowgli. If you want to support the channel in a different way, then I've recently set up a Patreon, and by going over there, you can get your hands on some exclusive content. Take a look and see what you think. Which movie do you prefer out of the 2? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.